Latest reports out of Syria's beleaguered northern city of Aleppo is that it has fallen to government forces. Syrian military sources were quoted as saying that the rebels comprising the Free Syrian Army and Al-Qaeda-affiliated groups had been cornered into a small part of the city and operations were on to wipe them out. Elsewhere, the sources said resistance had collapsed and the rebel fighters had the choice of either giving themselves up or getting killed. Thousands of civilians have managed to flee the carnage into government-held western Aleppo, but the fate of hundreds of others, including women and children, is not clear. This is the biggest defeat for the rebels in recent months. Bureau Report, WION.
This is a very significant move. As we see, Aleppo is, got a lot of history. In the Ottoman Empire, it was the third largest city. It has seen a lot of history, but today we see it entirely destroyed. Now, joining me for the discussion is Daniele Pagani in the studio. Daniele is our WION correspondent. He spent months in the Kurd areas and on the border of Iraq and what is called the Kurdish Autonomous Region. Also joining us is Wael Awad. Wael Awad is Syrian by descent, but he's an international correspondent and he's covered the world. And let's go down first asking Daniele. Daniele, explain to us what is the significance of Aleppo falling?
It is a very significant victory for the regime of Bashar al-Assad. First of all, it's a huge symbol. All the world knows that the Syrian regime was fighting in Aleppo against the rebels. Rebels who are mainly fighting within the ranks of Jabhat al-Nusra, which is Al-Qaeda, the Al-Qaeda branch in Syria. So this is the first big victory that President Bashar al-Assad can claim, and along with him, the Russian can claim to have helped him. Militarily, it is also very important because we have to understand that right now Assad controls all the northern and western part of Syria, which is also the agriculturally more developed. So he can start, get back on track his country in the region, and starting from there he can probably start to advance towards Raqqa slowly, which is the capital city of the Islamic State.
Let's bring Wael Awad into this discussion. Awad, you know the lay of the land. Explain to us the significance of Aleppo falling back to Syria.
Thank you, Rohit. Actually, Aleppo is always considered the commercial capital of Syria, and it has been composed of around 5.5 million, including Damascus. They were both the capitals were 55% of the Syrian population. Now, it has been the commercial capital, and everybody knows that it has been able to export to 115 countries all the products of Syria because of the success of the composition of the people of Aleppo, who were a good businessmen, and they have really flourished Syria for so long. But it has been under siege for the last 3 years because of the Al-Qaeda, as Daniel was saying, have taken control of the eastern part of Aleppo. Thanks to our neighbor Turkey, which opened the border to all the infiltration, that they have been able to dismantle 1,500 factories were in Aleppo, and you can see it all on YouTube, were siphoned to Turkey and sold at the token price. That was at the beginning of the war on Syria, and we know Erdogan used to go himself to Aleppo, walk with President Assad when they used to have a honeymoon for 10 years. And he used to see the Aleppo people, how they manufacture, how they live in peace and the tranquility. And he was knowing that to get this cut size Aleppo, he would be able to sell his surplus products into Aleppo. And he succeeded in making it for not only $2 billion business for his revenue, 10 billion after he dismantled Aleppo. So you can imagine Aleppo, what is meant for Syria and what is meant for the people of Syria.
Well, but if you look at what has happened to Aleppo, or the videos that we see coming out, we saw a lot of videos being put out of there. It's very, very destroyed. It's in a very bad state. How will Aleppo revive itself? How will it stand back up again?
Aleppo survived 11,000 years, Rohit. It has been the oldest inhabited city in the world, as per the Guinness Book of Records. So people of Aleppo will come back. They have already told the president, in fact, long time ago, that kill or destroy or expel these terrorists from our region and from our neighboring places of Aleppo, and we promise you we will rebuild Aleppo. I know Syrian government will be requiring not less than 500 billion US dollars to rebuild the whole of Syria, revamp of the Syria which has been destroyed because of the 6 years of onslaught from different parts of the world. But I assure you, the Syrian people, trust me, will be able to rebuild with the help of a good friends and good nations who wanted to see peace and tranquility back in Syria.
Daniele, let's talk about what was happening on the ground when you were there. You were in that region overall when we talk about Mosul, when we talk about those areas. How do people view different nations who've been involved there? The Americans have been involved there. The Qataris have been involved there. The Russians have been involved there. Explain to us, how do people look at these countries?
Yes, this is a very interesting question. So when it comes to Mosul, when I met residents of Mosul, I tried to speak with them when it was possible due to language barriers. What was their take about all these nations coming and actually fighting in what is their city, their life, their background? What I have to say is that there was a constant favor for the American. The American presence among the people of Iraq, the people of Mosul, was very welcome because they perceived that thanks to the American government helping the Iraqi forces and also the other 12 countries part of the coalition, the victory against Islamic State was close. Nevertheless, they would like all the countries helping them to fight the Islamic State, to abandon their country and let them decide what will be their very own future. So there is also this kind of ambivalence when it comes to foreign countries helping them on the ground.
You know, that's always been a challenge, whether it's the Middle East, whether it's Iraq, whether it's Syria, or even Afghanistan. That's always been a challenge. The whole concept of people shouldn't stay too long. They can come as guests, but they must exit so that they can run their own country. But when we talk about Syria, you know, Syria is a different case than Iraq or Kurdistan. Explain to us what do you hear on the ground in terms of there has been an onslaught in Syria and really backed by the Qataris, the Saudis, and where some of it very supported by the Americans themselves. Explain to us how people react to that.
Yes, so I had very limited access to Syrian citizens and especially to residents of the city of Aleppo due to evident problems of communication, especially when it comes to the eastern part of the city. The people I have been speaking always told me that, and here I have to disagree with our guest, that they were not that happy with what their very own government was doing in the eastern part of Aleppo. And I couldn't, at least when it comes to my portfolio of contacts, they were not really positive when it comes to the next phase. And they have a clear perception that Russia is actually playing a game of power on, let's say, their shoulders, using the Syrian civil war in order to re-enter the game of the Middle East and regain a foothold in a region where they did not have one for at least a couple of decades.
So. Totally. You know, there is obviously a challenge there as well. When we look at the fall of Aleppo and multiple other cities over to ISIS or Islamic State, whatever you want to call it, there is that challenge as well. How do you address that to the rest of the world? Should we be looking at the Syrian President government, Assad's government, as the defining power, or will we see this fight continuing? How about that question to you?
I think Syrian government have taken the decision.
Go ahead, Awad, go ahead.
Are you talking to me, Rohit?
Yes, Awad, I'm talking to you. Go ahead. You were answering the question.
Yeah, I was just saying that the Joe Biden himself, the Vice President of the United States, have said that we have created IS with the help of Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, to topple the Syrian regime and to destabilize the region. And he said it openly in a public meeting. I don't know why should we understand that the regime change policy by the United States, supported by its regional players, is a good thing and a good omen for the people of the region. It means destruction, it means wars, it means total chaos in the region, and that's what they have achieved actually inside Syria and Iraq and Libya, in Yemen, in everywhere they have put their foot into this regime change policy. Now, if Aleppo has been in tranquility for years, why this country has to be destabilized, and why the American go and destabilize this region if really they wanted peace and tranquility? They are already supporting Al-Qaeda. They already supported IS. This is a change of regime change policy which have really created this mess. What happening in Aleppo, it's understood by the rest of the world. We know, everybody knows who live in this part of the world, understand the game plan. We know what is going on in this part of the world. Why should we continue suffering, Rohit? The question here should be, when the Russians stepped in inside Syria, they changed the balance of power. They told the American, you are no more. You can walk into Iraq, invade unilaterally, destroy a country, and destroy Libya, and say, this is our saying in the region. The Russian has come to Syria to protect the Syria from disintegration. Erdogan was promised in Lisbon by the American and the NATO that he will be given Mosul, he will be given Aleppo as a part of a gift to him if this war continues and the mercenaries are allowed. You can imagine the amount of weapons they have captured inside eastern of Aleppo, the amount of food they have stored these people inside Aleppo. You will be amazed to see that this much of weapon they were able to siphon into Aleppo without even saying there was a food. Are we creating a humanitarian crisis to say that there is a humanitarian intervention? I feel the pain of each citizen of Aleppo. I have lost all my relatives. I know what is pain of getting killed, living in the opens, destroyed your house, no water, nothing to starve, nothing to eat, and yet we tell to the world this is the real story, and what we see is the smear propaganda showing the other side of the story. Have you ever seen the celebration of the people who have been released from 3 years of besieged by this terrorist organization, what they have done? We have seen how they beheaded the Palestinian boy 6 months ago, the Zinki group of the Turkestan party of Turkey, which have really killed the people there. They were slaughtering the Syrian army, beheading people. None of the world have really opened their eyes. Why it is only atrocity when the Russians have taken part to stop the disintegration of Syria? That is the message we have to tell to the world. This war has to stop. This war, you can stop the exodus of the Syrian people, and you can solve your problem of migration if you stop this policy of regime change. We need an international body, a new world order that can see that wars does not bring peace anywhere in the world. It just destroy and kill people.
Well, let me come back to you, because I think we do want to talk about this larger picture. A lot of the world does not understand. A lot of the world is connected to the Middle East, also because of the oil to start with. But the whole structure of the Middle East and why so many countries are even there, and what is the interest of these countries, that has always been something. I spent a fair amount of time in Iraq and Jordan, and I could never understand why are all these countries here. Daniele, let's go back to talking a bit about Palmyra. ISIS still controls it. Is this war going to continue to be prolonged, and how much of a backing do they have? What kind of a size of force does ISIS have?
Well, this fact of Palmyra, I do not think is a very significant victory when it comes to a military perspective. Okay, Palmyra is not located in a very prominent area, it's not too close to the regime. So what I definitely think is that this happened because the army that President Bashar al-Assad is right now having boots on the ground is actually not an army anymore. It's a very limited army. So they do not have control, they do not have the capability to control a vast amount of territory. So big swaths of lands are impossible to control for the Syrian army. So I think that right now what the Islamic State did in Palmyra is more of a symbol. They are attacking a symbol. They know very well what this means for many Western countries and non-Western countries to attack such a precious element of the heritage of the world, representing the history of civilization.
Now let's go back to talking about the big question, Abad. What is the interest of the world there? Why are so many countries involved there? Let's break this down. Let's talk about first the Qataris and the Saudis.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I think that's the strategic outlook of what's going on in Syria. we have a problem of the multipolar world where the United States does not want to see Russia or China coming together. So there is an isolation of Russia in the region. And that part of isolation is by bringing the pipelines diplomacy from Qatar through Saudi Arabia, through Jordan, into Syria, into Europe. So they cannot depend more on the Russian oil, gas supply. Second, which is more important also, the discovery of gas reservoir in the Mediterranean, which is shared by 5 countries, the Syrian, the Separatic, the Lebanese, the Israelis, the Palestinians, and they are all sharing the water in this. And 2/3 of this gas has been seen inside the Syrian water territories. So if that is the situation, then there is a war because of gas and oil, as you have stated, Rohit, in your statement a little earlier. It is a very fact that there is a big power fighting. It's a proxy war fought on Syria. And Qatar, for example, was one of the leading countries which had the best relation for 10 years with President Bashar al-Assad, including the Turkish president. They were too close to him, but they wanted to have a pipeline cross through Syria into Europe, where he said, I have a Russian friends, which I cannot oppose them, and I need to take their permission. And here the break start. When the Qatari severed the ties with Assad, similar things that the Turkish also severed the ties because they wanted the Muslim Brotherhood to have the 2/3 of the cabinet from the Muslim Brotherhood organization, which is banned in Syria. Now, this is one of the issues.
I'm
Secondly,
sorry,
which is more important also.
Well, may I have to stop you for a second? We're going to take a quick break now. When we return, I want to talk a bit more about the Qataris and then go and talk a bit more about the rest of the players there, whether we talk about the Americans, whether we talk about the Russians. But on the other side, let's also then go ahead and talk about the recent attacks in Turkey, which has been blamed on the PKK, and they seem to have accepted that they carried out the attacks. Daniele Pagani was there. He met with the leadership there of the PKK. We will listen to that interview as well, but let's continue talking about this, because the way this whole Turkey and Syria is connected back to South Asia, at the end of the day, the world is connected. And that's why we thought investigating the story, understanding how it impacts the world. So stay with us on Gravitas right after the break.